Okay, we are here with the conclusion to Second Coming. And the ending of this is beautiful, wonderful, and sad at the same time. God, it's such a glorious, beautiful ending to this whole thing. So, once Hope Summers becomes aware that basically her adopted father, if you want to call it that, Cable, had gone on a suicide mission with X-Force with no way to return from the future, that they were all basically going to die, she freaks out on Cyclops, right? You know, she's like, you sent them there to die. Like, why would you send them there knowing that there was no possible return? But at the end of the day, it was the thing that had to be done. The only way to stop all these Nimrods from coming through the portal into this current timeline was to find a way to destroy them on the other side. And that there is only one jump in Cable's, time jumping abilities. So even though Hope's mad about the fact that Cable went, they all went knowingly and willingly. They weren't duped. They weren't tricked. So what we do is pick up on the other side of this portal. And we end up basically seeing a universe that's not that dissimilar from Days of Future Past, where basically humanity won. Now, the big difference between this and Days of Future Past is that in Days of Future Past, everybody was conquered by the Sentinels, humans and mutants alike. And this one, humans are working with Sentinels and kind of controlling the Sentinels per se. But off in the distance, you have these two gigantic master molds that are just producing all these Nimrod Sentinels. Now, these are not your traditional master molds, right? Your traditional master mold originally stood maybe 30 to 40 feet tall, and in other appearances stood maybe almost 100 feet tall. These ones are several hundred feet tall. They are colossal in size, and they have to be to just kind of be spewing out all these Nimrod Sentinels. More so than that, they're actually sending them through this portal 5 at a time. But because they're being produced by master molds, it's an endless army. And that's what I was talking about with a war of attrition. Inside here, waiting to go through the portal, are 170,000 Nimrod Sentinels. Beyond that is an infinite number, however many these master molds can make. And initially, X-Force is just completely shocked and surprised by the fact that all these different mutants, basically every mutant here, has been eradicated by the Sentinels at some point in time. The X-Men are all dead, the whole 9 yards. And so what they realize is that their main goal, right, leaving all the distractions out, is to destroy the master molds. They are initially set upon by a couple of humans in these sort of floating robot gun devices, and ultimately they kind of subdue these guys and take these guys out. But their main focus is, we got to destroy the master molds, right? Those are our targets. Now, switching back to the main Marvel universe itself, focusing on like Hope Summers, initially she just goes to grab a weapon and is told by Rogue, like, you can't go out there, because right now, Hope Summers' powers haven't manifested. She's basically just a person who's a highly trained military combatant by Cable. But you have all these other mutants out there who were fighting for their lives against this just endless onslaught of Nimrod Sentinels that keep coming through the portal. And these guys are getting wrecked. A good example of this is Colossus, right? They analyze this guy and they say target has terminated bipedal functions, adapting. Strength quotient is 1.5 tons per pound. Compensating, they snap this guy's arm, right? They literally break Colossus' arm on the spot. And that's kind of what's happening to all these mutants all over the place. They're just getting crushed by these Sentinels. Now, a lot of them are surviving, and a lot of them are thriving, and they're able to hold them off as best they can. But I would argue probably a 50-50 split. And it's not even just mutants that are being attacked here. It's even humans that are being attacked here, being caught in collateral damage, all that kind of stuff. And so what you do is you pick up with X-Force as they come across what is in effect one of the master mold facilities, or really a facility that has the two main master molds that they're going after. What they initially find here is a hound. And for those of you guys who are unfamiliar with hounds in Marvel Comics, you usually see them in like post-apocalyptic stories. Days of Future Past, Age of Apocalypse, different things like that. But they are mutants, more often than not telepaths, or at least mutants that are trackers, that are able to locate other mutants. And they're used by humanity, or even by the Sentinels themselves, to find and kill mutants, no matter where they are, as long as they're in a reasonable vicinity, right? 25 miles, give or take a little bit, if you go by way of a character like Caliban. But for the most part, like, the X-Men kind of break into the facility, take out a whole bunch of these humans, that's more or less it, and then you switch over to Cypher, Doug Ramsey. Now, he's kind of the ace in the hole, and the core of the plan as it's been brought together here. The whole idea of Doug Cypher, which I don't think we talked about his element in the last video that we did, his role in the plan, but the role of Cypher here is that because he can speak any and all languages, including machine language, the goal is to get him here, and then to get him to corrupt the master molds, basically like a virus, and then in turn, shut down the Master Molds and shut down the Sentinels. And so what happens is that when one of these humans in one of the robots comes across Doug Ramsey, he starts talking to the robot. He starts communicating with it. And he says, like, you're just kind of a slave to humans, right? Like, I can show you to think for yourself. I can set you free. And where this guy's like, you cannot talk me out of killing you, the response of Doug is, I wasn't talking to you. And so the machine jettisons the guy out, literally kicks him out. And then in turn, it allows Doug to pilot the machine itself. So now Doug has some measure of transportation and some measure of safety. The bigger problem here is that once X-Force gets to the Master Molds, sure, the Nimrods largely ignore them. They don't really care about them at all. But what they have to focus on are the Master Molds themselves. These are not just like cardboard cutouts. They're not just like something you kick over pretty easily. Destroying a Master Mold, even on the best of days, is a very difficult task to do. Destroying one of these Master Molds, even more difficult, to the point that none of them are really able to do it. And in fact, with there being two Master Molds here, the one on the left, as Cable explains, is the one that's producing all the Nimrods. So it's like, okay, let's destroy that one because the other one looks like it's out of commission. When they go to attack it, it turns out the one not producing the Nimrods is seemingly a kind of protector model, or whatever it is. Like, it stands up. And this thing is, again, probably like 400 or 500 feet tall. So it's not some easy thing to destroy, but its size is its weakness. Now, a really cool moment here is when we jump back to the main Marvel Universe itself. One of the things that's gone on is that Magneto's been here this whole time, kind of injured and out of commission, and there's a whole backstory as to why that's the case. But this guy recovers, and as you guys know, Magneto is not one to just sit idly by and watch as the mutant population is attacked by any force. It doesn't matter what it is. And so Magneto goes out to greet and to fight all these different Nimrods. And the funny thing about this is that when it comes to Magneto, sure, he has control over magnetism, but again, Nimrods can adapt, they can compensate, they can figure out ways to work around his varying abilities. And that's exactly what happens here. It's not so much that they can basically block his control over magnetism, or they can like turn themselves into plastic. It's just that most of them start targeting him, because as capable as he is, they realize after analyzing him, he's not at 100%, which makes him easy pickings, right? He's much easier to take out now than if he were at like full capacity. I guess it'd be different if somebody like Fabian Cortez were here to like supercharge his powers. Then he could take them all out in one fell swoop. But such as it is, he can't. And so literally 3 of them just kind of flank him from all these different directions, right? Coming in from all these different sides, launching energy attacks left and right, more than Magneto can keep up with. And while it's not enough to destroy him, it is enough to momentarily incapacitate him, right? They even say mutant energy capacity at 32%. He says more than enough, robot, and they say tactical analysis suggests otherwise. He says your analysis overlooked one thing. I built this asteroid primarily out of iron, and literally brings together all these pieces of metal and just pierces right through these guys, right? Just punches holes straight through them. And it allows Magneto to momentarily take some of these guys out. Now, it's not enough to turn the battle, right? It's not like, oh my God, Magneto's here, and now the day's saved, and we'll just sit around twiddling our thumbs until X-Force is done in the future. No. They're still fighting for their lives, folks. There's not a whole lot they can do. But you switch over to Doug Ramsey, right? And what happens is that the whole plan is that while X-Force, Wolverine, and X-23, and Archangel, and all them, while they kind of distract the Master Mold by launching attacks at it and so on, it's all designed to keep it from realizing that Cable and Doug are missing, because their job is to sneak inside the thing and to basically get to its computer core, right? Its AI, more or less. And when they do, it analyzes Doug Ramsey, and it says brain activity mapped as repeating cycle, periodicity 6S, valency level 0.98V. I don't know what that means, right? And then like, it just runs through a whole bunch of stuff about like the nature of his brain. I have no idea what any of this stuff means, but basically Doug says, you're missing the point. There's more to this than raw numbers. And that's when Master Mold says, statement is erroneous. All things are expressible in digital form. All things are algorithms, predicting and controlled via mathematically derived models. Interface established, assimilation proceeds. And it just starts taking over Doug Ramsey. Now, where it does look like this is the death of Doug, it's actually going exactly as intended. But one of the things that I want to point out here is this can't come fast enough, because while Doug's here and this whole thing with Master Mold is going on, the X-Men are losing. right? Like out there on the battlefield, they're losing because they can only fight for so long. The great thing about Sentinels is that they effectively run on a kind of limitless energy source. So if you can't destroy them, they'll just keep fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting over and over and over again. And if you do, like for every one that you destroy, another one comes right through. So there's no way to just defeat these things outright. The portal has to be shut or the production has to be stopped. And so switching back to Doug, he says, so you're killing me, I get that, killing me with numbers. Terrible, perfect numbers. I see the pattern now, I can copy them right back in the pieces of my mind that you're destroying. So I can start to improvise. And so what happens is that you have Doug who literally starts rewriting the computer code of the master mold itself, taking it over like a virus in a computer, right? A ghost in the machine, and it starts to malfunction. And then eventually it shuts down. And because they're all kind of networked through the exact same thing, the other master mold shuts down, which means it stops producing Sentinels, and all these Nimrods back here on Earth all start shutting down. They all just start collapsing, and that's effectively it, right? The day is seemingly saved. The problem is this: how do they get back? There's no way to jump through the portal because it's not organic friendly. Only machinery can go through the portal. And there's no more jumps for Cable's time travel device because it's all basically burned out. And so what happens is this: while people cannot physically touch the portal and pass through it, a machine can hold the portal open, right? Like holding a garage door open. And that's exactly what happens here. Laura Kinney tries to pass through it, right? She tries to enter through it, and she almost just gets completely obliterated, right? She's burned all to pieces. And so what they realize is that if they cannot enter it, then the best they can do is just stay here for the night, right? And hope for the best. Cable watches the whole thing unfold, and he's like, no, that's not going to happen. Cable pushes his hand through the portal and then opens the portal up exactly like a garage door. Because remember, Cable is one part techno-organic virus. What Cable has to do here in order for it to work is he has to let the virus run its course, let the virus overtake his body. And in fact, that's exactly what starts to happen here. Cable starts to convert into machine. This is the answer that so many of you guys have to the question, what happens if Cable stops focusing on his techno-organic virus? If he just lets it run amok on him. He looks pretty dope. Don't get me wrong, right? He looks like a computerized version of like Colossus, but he's holding this whole portal open, and it allows the rest of X-Force to make their way through. But the issue is there's no way that he can stop it now. When the techno-organic virus starts to take over control, outside of very rare moments in Marvel Comics, like the Onslaught Saga and the Aftermath, there isn't really a way for Cable to revert the techno-organic virus. So once it overtakes his body in its entirety, the clock starts counting down, and it's only a matter of time before Cable dies. And it's just this incredibly tragic but beautiful moment, because while everybody's calling for like Doug, and they're calling for Logan, and they're calling for the other members, Hope is calling for Cable. She says, Nathan, please say something. He says nothing, just completely shatters, right? Just completely falls apart at the seams when the portal cannot be held open any longer. And so because of that, the portal effectively starts to collapse. And so what you get is Bastion alongside Graydon Kree. Now remember, one of the things that was established earlier is they were brought back by way of the techno-organic virus, which means they're not actually human. They are basically super advanced Sentinels, right? Prime Sentinels, if we're really being honest with ourselves. It's really the best way to explain what they are. But in essence, they're effectively converted by Bastion, completely taken over, and turned into their Sentinel form. And he just kind of sends them forth, along with himself, to attack the X-Men, because he sees this as basically the ending, right? I mean, like, they've effectively lost, right? The portal has basically been closed, the Master Molds on the other side in the future have been stopped. That's basically it, right? There's not a whole lot that they can do to win, but his whole stance is the mutant messiah has to die. And this is when you get the moment with Hope Summers that so many people in Marvel Comics are aware of, but very few people have actually seen if they never read Second Coming. Bastion shows up here and immediately just like destroys part of the Golden Gate Bridge. All these X-Men start falling into the water, and it's just Hope Summers there by herself. And Bastion shows up and says, survival is not an option. The mutant species ends here. It ends with you. And Hope Summers is incensed, right? She says, you. And like everybody's telling her to leave. They're like, you have to go. You need to get out of here. You cannot stay here. They will destroy you. And Bastion says, no. Creed, Lang, kill every mutant you see. We will deal with the girl. Of course, Bastion referring to himself because he's a combination of Master Mold and Nimrod. And literally, Hope says, he was all I had. He was my whole life. And she just starts channeling all this power. The girl quite literally goes Super Saiyan. What's nuts and what you're seeing here is she's actually duplicating the powers of all these mutants who are around her. Just all these different abilities. She copies the abilities of armor to encase herself, and literally in energy form of armor, she copies the optic blasts of Cyclops, right? Bastion is like warning, new mutant powers detected, classification unknown, power levels unable to calculate. And he says, our only purpose is to eliminate you, to end the chaos and death that you bring. Do you understand, Hope? And he says, and we will end you. This moment, this is the beginning. They look to you as a messiah, but you are not. You are the adversary. Your death is the reason for our existence, and we will never quit. You must be killed to ensure that humanity lives. That is our purpose. For if you survive, nothing survives. And channeling all these different abilities, Hope breaks out the one power that terrifies the world the most. Hope Summers invokes the Phoenix Force. Now, this is one of those moments in Marvel where it had just kind of been teased so many times in like advertisements and different things like that. Marvel toyed with the idea when Hope Summers was originally introduced that she was like a reincarnated Jean Grey. You guys remember that? Right, when Marvel was like, people were like, is this Jean Grey coming back? And Marvel was like, oh, maybe it is, maybe it's not. You have to read the comic to find out. And it turned out that it wasn't. But she was a host for the Phoenix. She's glowing with this fiery energy. Emma Frost is well adept with the nature of the Phoenix Force. And where the statement's asked, like, what's happening? Like, Logan, what is going on? Emma Frost is just like, oh my God, no. And like Hope looks over at Cyclops for a moment. And that's when he realizes she has the power of the Phoenix. Now, the Phoenix, as we know now, in terms of like the various changes that Marvel has made, is an astronomically powerful force of energy. According to the Al Ewing, the new hierarchy that was established in Defenders Beyond, the Phoenix is more powerful than the Beyonders, for those of you guys who know what those are. But the point is that like Cyclops tells Emma Frost, like, you guys stay here, like there's nothing you can do. And the response of Emma is, I know, because she knows the Phoenix Force is back now. And she knows that Hope Summers is the host for the Phoenix Force. Now with the battle between her and Bastion, Bastion says, it is beyond our capacity to hate you. It is beyond our capacity to enjoy murdering you. We have grown beyond our capacity because we do hate you and we will enjoy killing you. But at the end of the day, it makes no difference that Cyclops and Wolverine show up and then attack this thing, right? Wolverine says like, this is for Kurt, and then basically hits the killing blow in its energy source, and Bastion explodes. But the cool thing about this is that Hope now represents the return of the Phoenix, because the final shot you get in Second Coming is Hope Summers levitating above everybody else, glowing with the power of the Phoenix. Now there is an epilogue here that does bear mentioning here, right? Does bear talking about, which is to say, there comes a point after it's all said and done, right? When the battle's over and the bodies have been counted, and for the most part, they're in the process of burying the dead, now they're having a kind of remembrance. And Emma Frost puts on her diamond form, and she's looking at Hope Summers and has a kind of momentary conversation with her. And what she sees for a split second is the form of the Phoenix engulf Hope Summers. And so what happens is Emma Frost runs to Cyclops, and Cyclops is like he stops her dead in her tracks before he can hear what it is she has to say, and he says, we were right. Because with Hope Summers fully taking on her powers, that's really the nature of Second Coming, because it ends with all these new mutants popping up around the world. The mutant population starts to return after the events of House of M, when almost all their powers were taken away by the Scarlet Witch. But with that being said, guys, we're going to bring this video to an end. This is the conclusion of Second Coming. Let me know what you think down in the comments section, and I will catch you all later. Peace.